What I'm saying is that they can ask some questions, so in that way, Mr. Gandhi can answer them. So maybe at the beginning of this, I wanted to know more about the future of education, and how technology is transforming, the whole education system. What's your view about that topic, and how do us as universities have to change inside, and what the kind of things that we have to do in the future?
I think earlier there was a view that you could actually give information to students at scale through computers, through the internet. But I get the sense that even though that is valuable and very powerful, you still need a human connection. You still need a teacher who actually communicates and puts that information together. So I think information technology helps you get information to the student, but I think you do need a human connection to turn that information into useful knowledge.
Moving to another topic, I have seen that you have done an extraordinary leadership in India. And I just want to know, what's your view about India? India is going to be a quite relevant country in the world in the next future. If you see the numbers of growth in India, if you compare that to China, you see that India has a lot of future. Is becoming quite relevant in the world. So what's your view about India, and what are the kind of things that you are saying in India in order to have that leadership in the world?
I think, of course, India has tremendous potential. It's 1.4 billion people, the size, bigger than China now in terms of population. But India is a completely different system than China. So whereas China is very centralized, uniform, India is decentralized and has multiple languages, multiple cultures, multiple traditions, multiple religions. So India is a much more complex system, and India's strengths, which exist, are not necessarily China's strengths. They're different. So they're big systems, but they're different and they operate differently. India also has a very old tradition, spiritual tradition, and a thought system. Very profound and old ideas that are very useful in today's world. The idea of non-violent political action comes from deep within Indian tradition. Mahatma Gandhi was a modern exponent of that. So there's a lot that India can offer to the world in terms of our tradition, our way of thinking, information technology, our engineering capability, our healthcare system. So I'm very optimistic about India, but at the same time, there are also fault lines within the Indian structure. There are risks that India has to overcome.
Which are those risks that you see?
The single biggest risk is the attack on democracy that is taking place in India. Because India has multiple religions, multiple traditions, multiple languages, and India actually is a conversation between all its people. And different traditions, different religions, different ideas require space. And that the best method for creating that space is the democratic system. And currently there is a wholesale attack on the democratic system in India. So that's a risk. This other big risk is risk between different conceptions, different parts of the country. Some 16, 17 different languages, different religions. So allowing these different traditions to thrive, giving them space to express themselves is very important for a country like India. We can't do what China does, which is suppress people and run an authoritarian system. Our design just will not accept that.
Now move to another idea. From India, what's your view about a country like Colombia? You came here, there must be some reason for that, but what's the kind of view that you have from India to a country like Colombia in South America?
I've been here 2 days. It's quite fascinating. There's obviously a very dynamic political contest taking place, and the country seems to be quite polarized between different political ideas. I quite like what I see as the spirit of the Colombian people, which is quite resilient and relaxed. They don't seem aggressive. it seems, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems that they tend to deal with problems and take life as it comes. And that's quite a good way of thinking about it. I like the diversity here. I've never seen so many new fruits as I saw over the last 2 days. So,
Talking about one of the things that you have said about how do you see humanity and politics in the world, there is a concern about polarization in the world. How do you see that? How to deal with polarization? How leaders as you can introduce a new view in the world in which polarization maybe is not the right way?
I mean, from our perspective, I can only talk about what we are seeing in India. Large country like India is struggling, even though we have good economic growth, we are struggling to create jobs for our people. And the reason we are struggling to create jobs for our people is because we are not actually producing, we are not manufacturing. We are a service-based economy, and large countries require a manufacturing base, require the act of production to employ its people. So for us, having a world where China produces everything means that we struggle to employ our people. So for us, fundamentally important thing is to start production and start to compete with China on producing material goods. That is central. A country like India simply cannot manage if it doesn't do that. Most of the people, for example, who are creating the polarization in the United States with Mr. Trump are people who have lost their manufacturing jobs. It's the collapse of US manufacturing that has left a huge number of people in the United States and in India and in Europe without jobs. And that's a volatile cocktail. So I think what's really important is China has demonstrated to the world how you do production in a non-democratic environment. We cannot do that. We are a democratic environment. We have to have a democratic structure. So for us, what's interesting is, can we develop a model of production, a model of manufacturing that is competitive with China, but in a democratic environment? And that's where a lot of the conversation between countries like the United States and India, Western Europe, is heading.
Once I was in the World Economic Forum with Ricardo Hausmann, he's professor from University of Harvard, and he told me, and he said, Colombia is more India, less China.
Yeah.
Saying that Colombia is more human talent and that we have to develop the human talent services, for example, software production and so on, rather than industry. Would you agree on that with Ricardo Hausmann?
No, because, look, there is a place for services. But in a country like India, high-tech software services is at best 1%, 2%, 3% of the population. It's a very small number of people who are actually employed in the software industry in India compared to the massive size of our country. India simply cannot succeed economically only on services. We're very good at services, and it's a very important part of the future. It's a very important part of the economy. But a large country cannot do only services. Country like Singapore maybe can do it, but large country like India can't do it. And by the way, I mean, he's a professor in Harvard. He's finding out that America can't do it because the levels of polarization that America is facing are not sustainable. And the entire political conversation in America, what Mr. Trump is proposing is a return to manufacturing, which I don't believe is possible for them. But that's what Mr. Trump is proposing. And pretty much any country now will tell you, big country will tell you that, look, having a world where China is the only producer is seriously problematic for us.
There was an article this week in The Economist which says that the one who is winning this war on tariffs is actually China, not the United States. So that China is taking more advantage of the war on tariffs that is happening now in the world.
I mean, I wouldn't classify it as a war. I'd classify it more as a competition. But look, if you are the globe's biggest producer, if you are sending products to the rest of the world, you will be in a very strong position by default. I mean, when the United States was the biggest producer in the world, they had a very strong position. So having this network of production, because in the 21st century, it's not just factories. Factories were silos, concrete silos. This is a completely different concept. This is a connected production network. And it's not just in China. It extends out of China. The core is in China, but it's in Vietnam, it's in Malaysia, it's in Thailand, it's in Bangladesh. So it's a completely different production system than anything that has been seen before. And it's very powerful.
I was looking at some of your remarks. This one was on Telegraph India, talking about health. And it's important because here we have engineers, but also we have doctors, future doctors. So you said health care and education can be left to the private sector. The government will have to spend money on this to provide access to low-cost health care and education. So what's your view about health, especially in a country like India, which is quite a big country, which has to do a lot of things in terms of health?
I think health and education are places where AI is going to play a very powerful role. But I also feel that in a country like India, simply privatizing healthcare and education doesn't work. We've tried it, and it doesn't work. Because you cannot give healthcare and education service to the poorest part of your population if your system is fully privatized. So, at least myself and our party believe in solid government support for education and healthcare. By the way, what's not known is that India's top performing education universities are all public sector. They're all government. So the famous IITs, these are government universities, right? IIM, IIT, they're all government. So Indian public education, Indian public higher education has been a big success. A lot of states in India haven't done so well in the primary education sector. Some states have done very well, but a large number of our successes in education are government.
And talking about the doctors, I was reading Bill Gates said that in 20 years with artificial intelligence, you will not have doctors because, I mean, all the diagnosis could be better done by using artificial intelligence. What's your view about artificial intelligence and medicine?
I think a lot of the thinkers in the West have this everything or nothing idea that doctors will disappear if AI comes, right? This is sort of, and it's common. I remember when computers were coming, it'll destroy jobs. So there is this tendency in the West to see, in black and white. I don't think that's how it works. Computers took away jobs, and then they created a whole new set of jobs. In the same way, I think AI will take away some jobs. It'll create a whole new set of jobs. And the country or the people who are positioned well will benefit. So I think in terms of the impact of AI, I'm glad the West says that it's going to remove all the jobs. I'm looking forward to getting most of those jobs to India. There is a tendency there in the West, whenever a new technology comes out, to see it as completely disruptive. AI is going to destroy civilization. The internet is going to remove all jobs. I don't subscribe to that. I think there are pros and cons of every technology.
And that comes with your idea of an innovation and humanity. I was looking at some of your views in NDTV about innovation and humanity. How innovation should improve people's lives? What are the kind of things that humanity or humanities or humanism is becoming quite relevant in this next future? In which ways?
At the end, whatever technology is there, it's going to be used by a human being, right? There's going to be a human being who's going to use it, be influenced by it, be affected by it. So I think good principle is humility and compassion. That when you're thinking about technology, you are thinking with humility, and then you're also thinking about what the effects of this technology are going to be on other people. So I think those are two very powerful values, and they're enshrined in the Indian political ethos. Our entire freedom struggle was, in fact, the only freedom struggle where these two principles were central. The British could kill our freedom fighters, but our freedom fighters would not act violently against them. And so this is a very, very powerful and deep value.
You know that in the world, there is a trend, at least in Latin America, there is a trend here in Colombia too, on demographic numbers, which means that the natality numbers are reducing. And also there is another trend about mental health issues. Those are issues related to the future of our cities and our countries. How do you see that in India? Is that happening also in India? Is different? And how to deal with that?
Look, in India, we've got a huge population. And our view is that if the population is productive, effective, then it's fine. But if you have a huge population and it's non-productive, and you're not able to give jobs to people, then it's problematic. If you look at the population growth rates in India, they're stabilizing. So the parts of India that are doing well, progressing, the population there is slowly stabilizing. I mean, we don't subscribe to sort of radical measures like the Chinese do on population at all, one-child family and stuff like that. So we feel that big population can be an advantage as long as you're doing enough to make it so. What was your second question? You asked something else.
Oh, mental health.
Yeah, mental health, yes. There is an issue because the competitive pressures are very, very high in India, especially among the younger generation. Limited opportunities, massive numbers of people, very difficult exams, difficult schools. So there are mental health issues across the board. There is a traditional system in India of managing some of those issues that is quite effective. I mean, it has its role and it's quite powerful, but it is an issue.
Let's move to another topic, which is entrepreneurship. 35% of this university, of our alumni in this university are actually entrepreneurs. Most of them digital entrepreneurs. And you said something in the Indian Express, something about entrepreneurship in India. You said that businesses have been decimated and India is unable to generate jobs for youth. So what's the kind of ideas that we can implement, that you are going to implement in India in order to do that?
So that is a specific point I made because of two policies that the government came out with. One was the demonetization of our currency, and the other, which essentially destroyed our small and medium businesses and allowed very large monopolists to control big sections of our economy. And the second is a goods and services tax, which was again designed to harm small and medium businesses. So we believe that infusing technology into agriculture, into small and medium businesses, and supporting small and medium businesses is the way forward for entrepreneurship. And that's a big difference between us and the current government. The current government believes that having one or two big monopolists is the solution. We don't agree with that.
That's quite relevant for this country, because in this country, more than, I would say that 70% of businesses are informal, non-formal.
Exactly.
And small enterprises, the majority of them are small enterprises. And also we have another problem, which is informality, in the way that we use a lot of cash for all the transactions in the economy. More than 70% of the transactions are in cash. So we have actually said, and we have discussed in this country, that we have to do something about that to solve the informality in terms of small enterprises, but also to reduce the cash and do more electronic transactions. In India, you try to do something to, extract cash.
So they demonetized the currency with the idea that they'd get rid of cash. It doesn't work. I mean, they demonetized it and cash is right back. So as a policy, it was a failure. You're right. There is big informal economy in India and in Colombia. But I think the forcible conversion of that informal economy into a formal economy is problematic. Whereas the gradual conversion of that informal economy into the formal economy is the way to go. You know, I don't think there's a reason that informal economy exists. And if you use hard tools to destroy it, you hurt people. I mean, there is, of course, there's a corruption element to that economy, but there's also a non-corruption element to that economy. There's a transaction cost element to that economy.
Now that you talk about corruption, in Colombia we have there a huge problem. 6% of our GDP, people say, or some people say, is related to corruption. How to deal with corruption? Technology? Use of blockchain?
I think, at least in our experience, decentralization of power is an effective tool. In India, we have huge amounts of corruption now at a very, very centralized level. 3 or 4 businesses basically taking over the whole economy, having a relationship, direct relationship with the Prime Minister. It's rampant in India. But I feel that decentralizing power, making things more transparent, bringing people into conversations, bringing people into processes is the best way forward. But corruption does exist, and it's a difficult thing to get rid of.
Would you recommend a decentralized model for a country like Colombia? You said in India it's decentralized.
I'm nobody to recommend anything to Colombia. I don't know Colombia. I don't understand it very well. But I can tell you what works for us. It's for you to decide what works for you.
But would you say that decentralization has been good for India?
In certain spaces, yes. I mean, it's again not a magic wand. There are certain spaces where decentralization has worked very effectively. So for example, one of our most productive, effective states politically is Kerala, where we have an extremely decentralized political system. And they have very good healthcare, they have a very good education system that has been built over the last 40, 50 years.
Before taking questions from the audience, I was saying that you are a member of currently you are a member of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Defense, which means that you're working on security. Now we're dealing with some issues on security in Colombia, especially security related to drug dealing, drug trafficking, and the whole business on drugs. Which are the main concerns in the world nowadays about security and how to deal with them?
In India, our security is geopolitical, right? The work that we do in our committee is nation-state level. Pakistan, it's China. That's the crux of the defense committee work. Then, of course, we have internal security as a paradigm. So yeah, that's the broad thing. We also have drug problem in a number of states, not as acute as yours, but we do have crime issues, drug issues. Different states in India do differently. Some states are much better at dealing with them. Some states are not so good. You have to visualize India as 30 big states, 29 big states. Our biggest state is more than 200 million people. So our biggest state, I think, is the sixth biggest country or 7th biggest country in the world.